So I'm really happy with my clouds. My background is set. I'm ready to add my next layer, which is gonna be mountains. So I'm going to mix some, as we remember from our mixing exercise, some red and blue, because I want some sort of a purple tone. And I'm gonna play around with the color there. I kind of want it to be a little more muted, so maybe a little bit of brown. So I'm gonna grab my crimson, and I actually am using some of, we don't want to waste our paint, so I'm using some of the excess blue that I used on my sky to start the mixing process, so that we're taking advantage of all the paint that we express, at least as much as we can. I know sometimes it will go to waste, but we do what we can. So as you can see, I'm mixing that paint in, and we're starting to get kind of a purple hue. And I do think I'm going to add some of my raw umber, or it's brown, kind of a dark brown in there. And I'm actually gonna take advantage of the gesso and the white paint too, because I want to kind of add softness, because this is also part of one of the back layers of our painting. So we don't wanna waste any of this, and we wanna soften up this purple color. Since it's gonna be a far away in the distance, it can be a little more muted tone. All right, so you can see that color we've got. Kind of a light purpley brown. Not the technical term, I know, but I always make up my own color names sometimes. All right, now I'm just preparing a square, medium-sized brush for our mountains. I have a square, and I'm also using an angle because that's so helpful when you're trying to do the mountain peaks, as you remember from our mountainscape exercise. All right, so I'm just going straight in to this purple color that we created. And I'm going to think about rule of thirds here. For separating this out, I kind of want my highest peak to be over here in this corner. So let's think about what we learned with composition and try to put this into place. So I'm going to be adding my mountain peak and kind of keeping it higher on this side. And your mountain range does not have to look the same as mine. Kind of play around with those natural bumps that you would see on a mountain. Nothing is set in stone. If you don't like the shape, and say, actually, I want this mountain to be a little bit more square at the top, or I want it to just be a little bit taller, or I want it to have kind of a hook on the top. That is totally up to you. All right, let's get a little closer look. I have expressed a little bit of white onto my palette, and I've mixed it in with that purple base color, purpley brown base color, and now we're gonna add our highlights. We're gonna say the sun is on the right side here, so the spots that are going to light up are gonna be facing this way. Okay, so we're just adding a little bit lighter spots in our mountain, and it's naturally mixing in to our base because it's still wet. So you don't wanna wait too long to add this step because we want it to be a natural blend into our base. You can already see that 3D effect taking place. You're drawing out what was originally very flat. I'm just gonna kind of fade it out at the bottom here. All right, and don't worry, like we've talked about before, if you add a little too much highlight, See, like right here, I added a little too much. Let's draw that back in into the shadow. Go back and forth. So if don't feel like it has to be perfect the first time. You can kind of play around with how much shadow and how much highlight. All right, let's go in and add some snow to our mountain. I'm using my palette knife, the shape with the long edge and the short edge, so I can, depending on how big my mountain is, I can kind of go back and forth and then just straight white paint. So I've expressed some white paint onto my palette. I'm gonna take my palette knife on the small edge and we're gonna practice scraping that snow just straight down those rough edges that would catch snowfall. Again, the snow is going to be staying on the highlighted areas. If you need to flip it over and use your other side, go for it. Whatever fits the best into these little grooves. We're just kind of dragging it along. And let the knife work for you. Use the shape of it to your benefit. Like where it comes to a little triangle up here, put that right in the tip of the triangle that you've created with your shadow. And then as the paint kind of comes off your knife and you don't have too much on there, you can kind of use an etching method to scrape some details in the shadow that just aren't as bright white. So it keeps that shadow effect, but you're still making it look like the snow is on all parts of the mountain. All right, before we go to the next step, we're going to actually use a glazing technique on the back on this mountain that we've placed. We've done the glazing technique, so we'll put the white paint, spray down the paint with our mister, and we're using that watered down paint to push our mountain even farther away from us, giving it that depth that we're looking for. Before we glaze though, we always blow dry this step. So take a second to blow dry your mountains and don't rush it. There's a little flecks of paint that can kind of stay and it's still some moisture, and then you go to glaze and it's rubbing brown all over your sky and it can kind of get messy. So take a second, blow dry this, or just let sit this and wait at least 10 to 15 minutes to make sure that this layer is fully dry. All right, so this layer of mountains should be completely dry. I've watered down some paint and I'm using my flat brush to just go ahead and swipe a nice layer of transparent white all the way across my mountain scene. All right, let's let that dry.